At its core, reality exists as an unfiltered, hyperdense network of interconnected, messy systems, continuously bleeding into one another. Traditional philosophical methods try to understand this dense environment by forcing it into rigid, predefined boxes. This approach relies on static taxonomies and correlationism. It acts as a filter that actively strips away the messiness of the network, leaving behind sterile isolation. By treating these static classifications as reality itself, the methodology actively suppresses complexity and constructs a false sense of order. Ottavio Maciel's 2021 thesis, First Outline of a Treatise on Metametaphysics, directly challenges this habit of filtering out the noise. The alternative proposed is a philosophical territory he identifies as complex realism, or cerematics. Navigating this territory requires abandoning static grids. Philosophy needs a categorization system built to handle fluidity and constant structural shifting. This requires the deployment of what Maciel calls the esposo categorial, the categorical outline. This outline functions as a dynamic, logographic matrix designed to track existence across multiple scales. To understand how this logic operates, we have to architect the matrix from its microscopic bedrock all the way up to its macrosystemic networks. The metaphysical task shifts away from disciplining reality to fit human assumptions and toward actually registering how reality emerges on its own terms. We start at the absolute foundational baseline of this architecture. This is Category 2, represented by the logogram This layer serves as the raw ontological floor of reality. These individual units are monads or actants. They operate as microscopic centers of appetition, holding the potential to interact. This foundational layer draws heavily from the process philosophy of Alfred North Whitehead and his concept of actual entities. However, mapping reality strictly at this hyper-granular, isolated level carries a risk. Whitehead warned that treating these units as totally disconnected leads to the fallacy of vacuous actuality. A point in total isolation achieves nothing. These actants must exert agency over their environments to generate structure. This necessity introduces Category 3, represented by 10. This is the concept of the trace, or form. Category 3 acts as the connective logic. It provides the temporary, shifting framework that allows different, isolated actants to interface and bind together. At its deepest ontological level, reality exists as an active, vibrating web of relational traces. Once traces can form, the obvious question arises: what actually drives the generation and movement of these connections? The engine driving this growth is Category 1, or E, creative complexity. This category represents the physical and conceptual push towards sophistication. It is the systemic demand to generate new connections and increase entropic organization. But infinite, unchecked creation within a finite system is impossible. Structures must eventually break down to prevent gridlock. That brings us to Category 9, or JO, chaos and dissolution. In this framework, chaos operates as a highly efficient state of decausation, actively unwinding complex structures. Together, Category 1 and Category 9 form a continuous, necessary feedback loop. Dissolution acts as the exact mechanism that clears the board, generating the open space required for new creative instantiations to take root. While this infinite loop of microflux is accurate, studying it in real time is nearly impossible for applied philosophy. To bridge the gap between microscopic chaos and observable reality, Maciel proposes a conceptual tool called the ontological centrifuge. Much like a laboratory centrifuge separating the components of blood, this tool spins the chaos to isolate the distinct layers and densities of reality. The separation establishes Category 5, or Wu. This creates a newly stabilized ontopioseological ground, a reliable floor where stable analysis can occur. Resting on this stable floor is Category 6, represented by the logogram Luke. We can call this Complex 6. This category serves as the gravitational center of complex realism. It encompasses the identifiable object, the system, or the macro network. You can observe the sociological application of these stable macro structures in Bruno Latour's actor network theory. Complex 6 operates on a strict rule of emergence. It is built from the micromonads below it, but its final macro form operates independently and cannot be reduced back to its parts. Category 6 finally supplies the stable, observable architecture required to conduct pragmatic metaphysical research. With these macro systems established, we confront a new problem. How do we observe and map these networks without falling back into the assumption that humans are the center of the universe? The system accounts for this with Category 7, or Chi, the indexical. This category functions as pure pointers and references. It allows the matrix to map knowledge and log interactions regardless of who or what is observing the system. The final operational toolset required to drive the architecture is Category 10,000, represented by 1. These explanatory categories are pragmatic tools to adjust depth of field. They enable a fine-tuned pixelation of reality, allowing the observer to cleanly shift focus from overarching macro systems down to individual micropoints. With this adjustment layer in place, the Esposo Categorical is complete. It stands as a fully functional architecture spanning from isolated microentities to sweeping macrosystems. Philosophy no longer has to choose between acknowledging chaotic micro-reality and relying on static macro categories. Complex realism provides the tools to map the relationship between these layers, providing a structured view of a multiscalar universe.